This is HBR News number 450. 70,000 government jobs are AFUERA. Charlotte Prudman faces suspension. Where we talk about the news of the week and give it the Badger treatment. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Honey Badger Radio. I hope you guys are doing well this week and that you're laughing at all of this absurdity so that you are not consumed by it. My name is Brian. I'm joined by my lovely co-hosts, as always, Mike and Hannah Wallen. We have a great show lined up for you guys today, so please be sure to continue the conversations both in the chat as well as the comment section. On this week's HBR News, we're going to be talking about the recent gains made by Argentinian President Javier Milei. Trudeau, on the other side of the of the conversation, passes a new bill that sounds a little anti-free speechy. Amber Heard stan Charlotte Prudman faces a potential suspension, and more. So stick around; it's going to be a good time. And be sure to join us afterwards for the patron-only show. On this week's patron-only show, I have this article from Business Insider entitled "The Death of the Nuclear Family. The typical American family was always a blip. It's time to rethink it." Where they put their antinatalism on full display, potentially. We will find out what they have to say about that in the patron show. So if you want to join us on the patron show, you have to become a Badger yourself by going to feedthebadger.com and starting a monthly subscription. $5 a month will get you into our Discord, where you'll be able to enjoy all of the additional content, like our extra shows and whatnot. And there's also lots of stuff going on in the community as well. So please consider doing that. And also, if you want to send us a message, we will endeavor to read it on the show by going to feedthebadger.com/justthetip, and we will read your message and when you send it. I don't know why I'm doing not well today. I don't know what's going on with my head. Anyway, and if you don't want to,
does it not count as a threat to say death to the nuclear family? Does it not even count as hate speech? The nuclear family is just a concept. It's a physical thing that you can actually kill. You can actually kill a nuclear family, but apparently you can say death to the nuclear family. It's a good thing and it should happen. And apparently, it's fine. It's fine.
Well, there are ways to do it without admitting that you're actually doing it. Like if you redefine the meaning of the term nuclear family in small and subtle ways, people will be like, "Oh yeah, I guess to some degree that makes sense." And next thing you know, we're extinct. So, this is why you have to be vigilant and call it out whenever you see it. We'll see what their argument is. Maybe they're going to make a really good case for getting rid of the nuclear family.
We could go back to what existed historically before the nuclear family, where people would have, 8 to 10 kids because the chances were some of them were going to die. That seems to be what they were referring to, so far as I could tell, because there wasn't really a time when it was normal for parents to be single, right? So obviously, they must be wanting people to have more kids.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing,
Probably
though. There are still families where there are 8 or 9 kids.
Oh yeah.
So I mean, this is unless you're going to make it illegal to have kids, which they could do. I mean, they did it in China. Why wouldn't they do it here? This is the thing that always.
If they're saying it was a blip on the radar, if it was just an abnormal thing, they can't be talking about people having kids because people have been doing that in human history.
Yeah, I think people having kids was a kind of a big thing. Yeah. So I don't know. But we will find out. So consider joining us in the patron show to learn more. And if you don't want to wake up one morning and find that we have been yeeted by the legacy internet, then first of all, get on alternate internet like rumble.com and follow us there. But if you want to avoid that, or if you want to be sure to be able to watch our content, go to badgerfeed.com. That's badgerfeed.com or honeybadgerradio.com. All right, with all that out of the way,
I personally look forward to the death of illegal immigration. And I can't go to Scotland now, having said that, because they'll arrest me.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I didn't make Scotland one of the stories, although I thought about it. Or maybe I should have. You could always bring it up.
It's unavoidable, really.
Yeah. All right. Well, anyway, let us get into today's stories. So we're gonna start by talking about Javier Milei and his whole thing.
Afuera! Afuera! You gotta say it back, man. It's
Who's gotta say it back?
Afuera! It's like a prayer. Afuera!
Argentine President Javier Milei slashes 70,000 government jobs as he continues massive reforms for Argentina after being elected as a libertarian candidate. Milei campaigned heavily to cut needless spending and purge corruption that comes out of much of Argentina's government workforce. Milei announced the cuts during his closing speech at the International Economic Forum of the Americas in Buenos Aires this week. So far, 5,000 jobs have already been cut, but more are on the way. 70,000 will proceed in stages, with at least 14,000 expected by the end of March. The Association of State Workers is one of the unions representing public employees in Argentina. ATE leader Rodolfo Aguilar called the layoffs illegal and unjustified, says the guy with the government job. Milei has described his process as a combination of chainsaw and blender. Why not wood chipper? Or he's saving that for a different department. Maybe the women's studies
combination of chainsaw and blender right there.
Yeah.
Wood chipper.
He claims that this approach is necessary to transform Argentina's economy. He also said that anticipates a V-shaped recovery for the economy, with short-term hardships now before things get better in the long run. Yep. He has addressed critics saying that, quote, there is a lot of talk that this is not sustainable. We did what we had to do, and that implies doses of courage that others do not have, end quote. Milei has pointed towards positive signs of his short-term and policies, showing that the peso's futures are aligning with the central bank's incremental adjustment strategy, and that the central bank is moving toward net neutral reserves.
Afuera! Yeah, people are calling Milei the Argentinian Trump. But frankly, that does him a disservice. He's way better than Trump.
Yeah,
Trump tried to work with the swamp. That was his biggest mistake. But yeah, there is no working with these crooks. They are an organized crime syndicate, not just in Argentina, but everywhere. Their raison d'etre is to shake you down as much as they can, as often as they can, and in return, they promise to keep you safe from all the other mobs, but they don't. On the contrary, they're in cahoots with all the other mobs, working together to steal from you as efficiently as possible. Now they're at the point where they're importing the other mobs and paying them to rob you through squatters' rights or just by giving them your taxpayer money to live the high life in hotels and whatnot. I don't know how bad it got in Argentina, but over here, north of my own border, i.e. Scotland, the government has already given up trying to solve or prevent crimes committed against Scotsmen. All they do is arrest innocent Scotsmen for saying things the government doesn't like anywhere at any time for any reason. The law came into effect on Monday. Everyone's talking about it out here. And no, J.K. Rowling, they're not going to charge you with these hate crimes. After all, you represent one of the mobs with whom they are in cahoots, namely the feminists. You can spew all the hateful bile you like against men, and all they'll give you is a pat on the head for doing their work for them. This is how it got so bad. People will proclaim that they don't trust the government, even though they're on the exact same page as them at all times. Misandric oikophobia, as far as the eye can see. They're lazy, incompetent thugs who follow the path of least resistance, so they go around kicking over all the sand castles because it's a shitload easier than actually building them. the first step is to stop feeding their misandric, oikophobic ideology. The next step after that is stop funding them, or at least give them less funding. We can never altogether rid the world of criminals. It's an unfortunate element of humans, especially as they accrue in such numbers. The best we can do is diminish their organized stronghold. And as long as we're forced to conform to the scam that is democracy, the only way to do that is by voting for an anarcho-capitalist like Javier Milei, as soon as you have such an option.
Afuera!
Afuera! And give these criminals no quarter while they scream and lie and wree their way into the dustbin of history where they have always belonged. God save Milei, long live Milei. Afuera.
That was the only good. That's like the best story. I should have opened with something darker and ended on this, but yeah,
it's sometimes good to get a happy start. And this is, and I expect to see people pointing to the early hardships as evidence that it doesn't work, right? That it's a complete failure and he needs to go back to big government, despite the fact that he is predicting the early failures, the early hardships that they're going to be citing. That won't stop people, right? Look, this is going on. Obviously, you need more government, but you don't. And in fact, it'd be very much like pointing to symptoms of withdrawal as evidence that you need more heroin. And unfortunately, government programs are a lot like heroin. Once you start adding systems and agencies and departments and regulations and benefits for the public that come at the expense of members of the public, you end up with people who are so dependent on government that they don't know what to do without it. And so we will have growing pains. We will see growing pains with that. And I'm hoping that as the success of it starts to show, that other nations will follow, instead of the world government that doesn't exist except for the fact that it doesn't close in and try to put a stop to what's going on there, because that is a possibility. And it is a good story. It is a happy story. It is also one that kind of makes you want to hold your breath a little bit and hope, and be worried.
Yeah, it is good news. I'm overall mostly I'm happy that he's eliminating. I think he's eliminating the women's and gender ministry. I mean that is just incredible.
Afuera!
I wonder what's I think what's gonna have to happen is that the people of Argentina are gonna have to come together and support each other, because if it's true that this is going to cause a lot of pain and suffering in the short term, it just means that the government was essentially standing in for a bunch of stuff that individuals could have been doing, and now those individuals are going to have to start doing, and that's okay. I think that it will work out in the long run if they're willing to endure some short term suffering. But I think that's how it's going to have to be, and then you'll see. I think that it'll take some time, but as long as they stick to it, adapt, and support each other as citizens, we'll see a recovery, and they may bounce back faster than we think. Who knows? I think a lot of people really want this. Maybe not the unions and the people who depend on the state, but you know what? They gotta go. So, any other thoughts on this? Usually the good news is short. So. Afuera. Yeah, one more time.
Afuera!
All right, well, let us know what you guys think about this in the comments. I'm going to look at your super chows, and we'll move on to the next story. So, I got this one from My Mini Rant, who gives us $5 and says, I wish people would understand the concept of opportunity costs. Every dollar taken to fund a government job is a dollar taken away from the rest of the economy to fund anything else, such as funding a small business loan.
Stop there.
Let me finish
Oh,
this.
no.
Such as funding a small business loan to pay someone's paycheck, to sit in someone's savings account, to mitigate risk as part of a rainy day fund, etc. The government does not compete on the market. It can only use violence to extract resources to fund itself.
It's not just taken away from funding for something else. It is stolen from members of the public. Every dollar that goes to fund anything the government funds is taken under threat of force and forced incarceration from members of the public, mostly men. It's not taken from some other part of the government that isn't, being funded the same because some other part of the government isn't getting the money. It's taken from you. It's taken from your neighbors. It's taken from your boss. Your boss can't give you a pay raise because he's paying for the welfare programs that support the people that don't work, or support the people who aren't getting paid enough because their bosses can't afford to give them a raise because they're paying for the welfare programs that support their employees less than a paycheck would. That's how the government is funded. Yeah, I'm triggered, Michael. When we hear government funding of one thing is bad because it means the government can't fund something else. That's no, it's bad because it means you got ripped off for nothing. You got ripped off to pay for something that you could buy for yourself better and more easily if the government wasn't stealing money from you and spending it on their way of doing that.
All right, well, thank you for the super chow, My Mini Rant. And next I got one from Meredith G. It gives us $5 and says, HBR News 450. The question about J.K. Rowling's is, will she make people feel a false sense of security to citizens because of police refusal to arrest her? Or will she cross the turf line too many times to the point where her feminism can't protect her any longer? The only thing I'll say about that is that you are only a feminist until the feminist lobbies and the feminists that matter decide you are no longer a feminist, and then you are the enemy of feminism. This is what happened to Erin Pitsey. Erin Pitsey will tell you herself that when she built the first shelter, she was a feminist. She believed strongly in what they were doing. She probably agreed with most of their, talking points and philosophy. And then when she was like, oh, you know what? Turns out women are just as violent in many cases as the men are. All of a sudden, she lost her cred as a feminist. So J.K. Rowling will likely inevitably cross a line if she hasn't already, and she'll become the enemy of feminists. Either that or intersectionality will take over, and I think it is taking over. That's my thought.
She's never going to do what Erin Pitsey did, which is admit that women can be perpetrators and men can be victims. J.K. Rowling's never going to do that. That's what I was on about. It's like she's delivering the exact same message that the Scottish government wants her to put out there. Women are victims and men are oppressors. She's never deviated from that line. So of course she'll never be arrested. It's not even because she's a billionaire. Like if she was a billionaire saying, "Hey, women can be cunts as well," yeah, then she'd get arrested. But she's not going to do that. It's just going to be the little guys. And not just because they're poor, but because they have anything to say pushing back on the feminist narrative or the oikophobic narrative. It's that's all it's ever going to be. Just like Humza Yousaf is never going to be arrested, no matter how much bile he spews about white people, because that doesn't count as hate. Hating white people doesn't count as hate. Hating men doesn't count as hate. All Humza Yousaf does is hate white people. All J.K. Rowling does is hate men. It's always going to be fine. It's always going to be this two-tiered justice system.
Yeah, as long as the hate is going in the right direction.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you. Oh, go ahead. Okay.
The really bad thing about these laws is, people don't really realize what's going on with them. This isn't really about the subjects of speech that they're trying to control. It's about creating a complicated web of laws that allow for the arrest of anyone at any time for any reason with very little explanation. And basically, if they continue, and it's not just one place, as we'll see in our later news stories, this is happening in multiple countries. But if they continue doing this, it'll make it so that you don't know when you're breaking the law. And that, I think, is the goal. If you don't know when you're breaking the law, then you don't know when you're not breaking the law. And if you're inconvenient in any way, whether it's you are opposing something that the government doesn't want you to oppose, or your home that you own is in the way of something that they want to do, doesn't matter. They'll find a reason to arrest you, throw you in jail, take all your shit, and make you persona non gratis. And people will say, well, it wouldn't have happened if you hadn't broken the law. Because they won't understand. But that's what's really being done here. And that's going to continue until people get wise to it and put a stop to it.
Yep. Thank you for that. And next Super Chow, Richard Bier gives us $5 and says,
¡Afuera!
So I'll just play you the soundbite for that since that's what you gave. And then I got another one from Richard Bier for $5. And he says, how many ads have you seen for government subsidies this year? I heard about a company that was given a government grant, build a vehicle wash bay that they don't use because of additional government requirements in order to operate it in compliance with regulations. The government.
You have to watch out for those ads, though, because a lot of them are actually scams. There are now so many instances of senseless and ridiculous free money that it's to the point now where you can't tell what the scams are and what are not scams until you start investigating it. And nothing is too ridiculous to sound realistic. So kind of watch out for that, especially if you got aging parents, boomer parents that are actually boomers. They may be looking at stuff online and think that they can get paid for something that actually they're going to end up giving their financial information to a scammer. So just another fun thing to be alert to.
Yep. And lastly, I got a super chat from Zeranx, and he says, all of that pain you're feeling as you lift weights says you should stop and go back to your sedentary lifestyle because it's good for you. LMAO. Thank you for that. Okay, well, I think I just got another one. Another super chow. Yeah. Bier. And he says, you are in compliance with the law as long as you weigh more than a duck. All right, thank you for that. Okay, now.
Sorry about that sound effect. I didn't know
what was that? Do that. I thought that was over here on my end.
Is that a tornado warning? No.
Yeah.
Oh no. Well, okay. So Hannah's getting tornado warnings. So if she suddenly drops out, tornado watch. Is that worse?
Yeah.
Well, hopefully nothing bad happens. We'll see. Let us know if she drops out suddenly. That's why. But
yeah, actually, it might to the bathroom right now. So
okay. The tornado is
the computer. Yeah, no. I'm just gonna go in there with the computer because it'll be easier than we're in the area for it. So sorry, I'm gonna mute for a few minutes, and then when I get set up in there, then I'll unmute.
Okay, sounds good. All right, we're gonna move on to the next story. Let us know what you guys think about this one in the comment section. All right, so the article that I have here might be a tad hyperbolic. I will clarify after it's over. But this is coming from The website is called thepeoplesvoice.tv, and it goes as follows. The Trudeau government, so this is in Canada, has introduced Bill C-367, which critics argue could criminalize expressions of traditional Christian beliefs under the guise of combating hate speech. They specifically refer to anti-Semitism. The bill aims to redefine hate speech boundaries and could lead to penalties for public expressions of Christian teachings, particularly on controversial topics like transgenderism. Past examples, such as the classification of Bible-based criticism of homosexuality as a hate crime and the imprisonment of a father for referring to his biologically female child as his daughter, highlight a trend of anti-Christian bias in Canada. These legislative changes pose a significant threat to religious freedom and have sparked concerns about broader societal and legal implications. And I say it might be hyperbolic because I shared this, and somebody who's a friend of mine that is like, an MRA, but is definitely like a lefty MRA. He sees this as hyperbolic lie, and he shows like a fact check that says Bill 367 C-367 is a private member's bill. Private members' bills don't often become law. Praying in public and reading aloud from the Bible are not mentioned. All right, but let's specifically, though, and I think this is worth pointing out, because I know that they frame it in a Christian context, but let's back off of that for just a moment. Let's just look at the bill. Okay? Summary. This enactment amends the criminal code to eliminate as a defense against willful promotion of hatred or anti-Semitism the fact that a person in good faith expressed or attempted to establish by an argument an opinion on a religious subject or an opinion based on a belief in a religious text. So, this is not specifically about Christianity, although the person who is, wrote the article is framing it in that regard. But if you just look at it as a hate speech law, it almost doesn't matter. It's called an act to amend the criminal code promotion or of hatred or anti-Semitism. So, basically that's the write-up. If you guys want to give your opinions on it, that's fine.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Already you can see a theme developing in tonight's show, folks. And it's not even as simple as your government hates you. I mean, it does, but it's the hatred your government has for you is proportional to how familiar you are, how much of a majority you are, and how male you are, obviously. But misandry is static as biological reality actually is in reality, whereas oikophobia is fluid, practically gaseous. Actually, it changes with the tides and with the ever expanding Overton window of progress. Right now, they're cracking down on Christianity, despite how feeble and anemic the church has become, as unfortunate as you may find that. And they're letting Islam get away with anything and everything, despite how vividly homophobic it is, not to mention anti-Semitic, not just in its texts, but in its practice. See, which goes to show you it's nothing to do with protecting the gays or the Jews. It's about destroying the majority in favor of the minority along whatever lines they can draw it. And what do you suppose is going to happen when Muslims outnumber Christians? You might think that's when Sharia law takes over and we magically flip from hating the majority to loving the majority, but you underestimate the ruthless evil of the state. It is greater even than the ruthless evil of any other ideology. The state is even more evil, even more totalitarian than Islam. When you are the majority, they will crack down on you as well. Because at that point, you are a threat to Big Brother. You are necessarily the greatest threat to Big Brother because you're anything that resembles a majority. What do you think will happen if the gays outnumber the straights? See, it sounds implausible, I know, but with enough sexual abuse, it could happen. With enough state-sponsored euthanasia targeted at the majority, it could happen, and that's exactly what's happening in Canada. But you can already see what's going to happen to the gays as they drift out of the minority class. They're next on the chopping block because compared to the trans people, the gay people are practically already a majority. You may have noticed the pattern. The state is already far more interested in pandering to the troons than pandering to the gays. The gays are so 90s, man. We're sick of playing with that toy. Everyone has it now. We want the new thing at all times. Yeah, I don't know how telling it is that the government machine is so analogous to a child. Because it's allowed to be. It's allowed to be as immature as it possibly can be because there's no one to hold it accountable for anything. And what happens when even trans is the old thing? What happens when you've euthanized so many cis people that you're left with mostly trans? That's right. Same thing. Now you're the familiar thing, my truny friends. You're now in the crosshairs of the oikophobes. The state will not stop until there is no majority left anywhere in the populace over which it rules, and everyone is splintered and balkanized and atomized, and there is nothing left to revere, let alone worship, except the state itself, Big Brother itself. Needless to say, we should be imploring the Christians to fight back, and we should be imploring the straight people to fight back, but it doesn't end there. We should be imploring the Muslims and the gays to fight back against what the state is inevitably going to do to you as well. Even if you consider each other to be enemies in one way or another, please understand, we all have a mutual enemy who is far more threatening to your cohesion, your way of life, and everything you hold dear, no matter who you are. And it is the cold, relentless machine we call the state. It can't be bargained with, it can't be reasoned with, it doesn't feel pity or remorse or fear, and it absolutely will not stop, ever, until you are dead. This public service announcement concludes.
Fuck you, asshole.
This is something I've been talking about for a while, and I've actually gotten in trouble for talking about it. YouTube memory hold some of my work over discussing this, so I hope they don't memory hold this episode. But in episode 143 of HBR Talk, I went over how political correctness is used as a means of escalating tribalism and preventing rigorous political debate by using the intimidating threat of being perceived as backward, bigoted, and ignorant to coerce the public to speak and act as if the preferred realities of the elitist correct population are real. And then I went on to discuss in the dystopian quandary the steps that sort of go from zero to political mass murder by a government or genocide, depending on whether you're looking at a group that's based around politics or a group that's based around, their race. They do this to religious groups. This is something that's happened throughout history over and over again. There's not just one example that can be cited, although there's just one example that sticks in everybody's minds. And it's actually quite sad that one example sticks in everybody's minds, because there were genocides and political mass murders that were bigger and crueler. And so when you start by dehumanizing a group and making them the bad guys in a war of political correctness, that pretty much sets the stage for people to accept atrocities against them, people to accept abuses, and then denials of them being able to participate in society on the same level as everybody else, and denials of them having the same rights and freedoms as everybody else. And then it gets worse as the stages go, to where they're getting attacked in the streets by people, to where their businesses are being boycotted, to where their humanity is being discounted by their neighbors. And that's when it gets to the point where a government can actually start imprisoning and, killing people, and people will let it happen, and they'll do nothing. They've already seen the group being defined as having a common characteristic, right? They all have a set of beliefs. We've already seen them being defamed as having unacceptable traits of character. Oh, they're all bigots because they have this set of beliefs. And collective guilt, historical guilt. And there are people that demonize Christians as having inferior qualities as well. Oh, you must be crazy to believe in that evil sky daddy, right? You shouldn't be allowed to vote because you believe in a sky daddy. Like that's pretty much, and it usually targets Christians too. It doesn't, when I hear this stuff from people, it's not about all religions. It's specifically targeted to Christians. These traits aren't treated as just common problems within the group, but as like natural or defining characteristics, and therefore inevitable, right? You can't do anything about it. And in treating it that way, you set the stage, you create the mentality for people to accept. These people just need to be, shuffled off into special places where they can be taken care of because there's something wrong with them. Right? And that's where we are now. That's where people are talking now. That's basically the reason why Trudeau wants to do this. It's basically the reason why you're seeing various nations outlawing types of criticism of human behavior, that what they're outlawing, generally speaking, targets people with certain religious beliefs. That's the first group they go after because it's easy. You're allowed to be prejudiced against people with certain religious beliefs as long as it's not certain other religious beliefs, right? And you're allowed to be prejudiced against people with certain skin colors as long as it's not people with lighter shades of certain other skin colors. And so yeah, we've hit the villain stage. That's actually pretty far down the scale, pretty far along toward government mass violence, government-sponsored mass violence. So, if you're celebrating this because you're atheist, you're part of the problem. And if you don't care because you're not Christian, you're part of the problem. You're basically creating a pathway for you to be next.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody should be subject to this.
Christianity is the only Abrahamic religion that it's completely okay to deal. There is no lobby group that will slander you. There is no media institution that will come forward and slander you for stepping out, like, I don't know, for criticism. It just won't happen. They're the only ones.
Well,
and frankly, in certain parts of the world, you might not know, but there are parts of the Middle East and Africa where there is a large Christian population, and they are attacked. I mean, in Ukraine, for example, Zelensky banned the Orthodox Church there, and his claim was that it was like connected to Russia, and he used it to eliminate the only religious institution they had there, and instead he replaced it with a state religion. State is now the religion in Ukraine. but we're not supposed to criticize that because Putin bad. In Israel, the Israel Gaza or Israel Hamas situation, Israel bombed an Orthodox church that was there. That there were 12 Orthodox Christians, including the priest, that died. They claimed that is because Hamas was hiding behind human shields in an Orthodox Christian church. So, and again, nobody can get upset about that. Nobody can say anything because they're either going to be called an anti-Semite or they're going to be called Islamophobic because we have those weapons. But there is nothing for the Christians. This is what and again, yeah, go ahead, Mike.
This is what we've learned since October the 7th. It's not that Christianity is the only Abrahamic religion that can be attacked. You can attack Judaism as long as you do it on behalf of Islam. You can attack Islam as long as you do it on behalf of not even Judaism, but specifically Israel. This is fucking weird.
Women, on behalf of women.
You can attack anyone you like as long as you are a protected group. It's that Christians aren't allowed to criticize anyone else, let alone attack anyone else.
Yeah. And and again, the broader point is this though, because I think that the if you look at the bill, it doesn't specify Christianity. It just says anti-Semitism. So it's possible that it was put into place because of pro-Palestine protests happening in Canada, because I know that was happening in the States, in all of the major cities. And it was because of the woke activists that the state created, and they ended up criticizing Israel because they saw them. All they see is it was what they perceive as the power dynamics. And I think the same thing may have happened in Canada. And this is damage control, but the thing is, I think it's Christianity that will be targeted, even though they're not involved. I mean, largely. And I think that the really important thing is, because I know that there are atheists that wash, and I know that they have their their beliefs and everything, but the thing is that this bill can apply to anyone. And if like Canada doesn't have free speech, they don't have a First Amendment, so it's just a matter of time before it gets to. I mean, like right now in Canada, if you address, like, if you have a child, and the child is convinced by their teacher that they're transgender, and you say, no, I'm sorry, honey, you're not actually a boy, you're a girl, then the state can just come in and call it hate speech and take your children from you. And they have done this. So, like, this, remember, Bill C-16. Remember, Theron Meyer was speaking and saying, this is a bad idea. Jordan Peterson was speaking. It passed through anyway. And as soon as it did, the trans activists were like, it's the law now. They were telling you to your face, we're going to use the state against you. You don't give us what we want. We will terrify you until we get what we want. And that's what's happening. And this is just another step down that same path. So, if you're focused on the fact that the person who wrote this is a Christian concerned about it targeting Christians, you're looking at it in completely the wrong way, especially if it bothers you. And here's the thing about the guy who responded to me that was like scoffing at the idea because he was an atheist and he thought that this was like some fedora tipping moment that he could take. And it's like, dude, it doesn't matter what you believe. Like, if you live in a Muslim country, let's say you live in Iran and you're an atheist. Guess what? Your atheism doesn't mean shit there. You can call him Sky Daddy all you want. You are now living under an Islamic state. So you're going to follow their rules or else. So, like, your beliefs or lack thereof don't matter depending on the context you're in. If the people around you believe it, then guess what? It's basically real. So, and yeah, I mean, you should be against this kind of thing on principle. That's it. Full stop. On principle. Anyway, with that said, let us know what you guys think about this one in the comments. And we will, let me see if I got any super chows or anything. Yes, I got one from Richard again. Richard Bier gives us $5 and says, a thing that is that all of the mentioned factions are all competing to be the government authority and excluding all other factions from the seats of power. So good luck trying to get competing factions to work together for any purpose when they are all after the top seat of authority. Yep. Thank you for that. And then I got one from the One Good Man. Oh, welcome. Do we have the One Good Man in our chat? Now, I was hoping he would come along. Maybe we can convince him to stop simping. The One Good Man gives us $5 and says, "Have you tried put a diverse chick in it and make it gay? And I want it lame. Have you tried?" I think is what you wanted to say. Put a diverse chick in it and make her gay. And lame. Thank you so much for the super chow. Appreciate it. Always good to get a little bit of levity in here. Oh, and I got one more from Richard again, who gives us $5 and says, "Canada is trying to make up for applauding in Parliament a World War II veteran from Ukraine who turned out to be a Nazi." I think he could see just fine. You'd see that everyone was cheering for him. He fought the Soviets. He fought the Soviets, right? In World War II. Pretty sure. Yeah.
Yeah, that's totally it.
That's totally it, right? Let us know what you guys think about this one in the comments. We're going to move on to the next story. All right. So, a social media influencer who sexually assaulted a 14-year-old boy twice in one night has claimed to have no sexual interest in children, a court has been told. The 46-year-old woman, who cannot be identified for legal reasons, was jailed earlier this month for 2 counts of aggravated sexual intercourse with a child under 16 years old. A jury found that she had climbed into bed with the teenager on an evening in mid-2021 and kissed him. "Don't tell your father about this," the woman told her victim before taking off his clothes and undressing herself. She then forced the teen to engage in oral and penetrative sex. On March 1st, Judge Sarah Hopkins sentenced the influencer to at least 18 months in jail with a maximum of 3 years behind bars. However, the judge told an NSW district court on Tuesday she had omitted part of her judgment during sentencing proceedings. She amended the record by clarifying that she had relied on expert opinions and the influencer had a low risk of reoffending. Judge Hopkins highlighted the conclusion of forensic psychologist Stephen Woods that there was no evidence the 46-year-old woman had pedophilic tendencies. No evidence. Professor Woods found she had no sexual interest in children, she said. The influencer was 3 times older than her victim when she snuck into a bed and raped him in the middle of the night. Judge Hopkins determined the woman had, quote, "good prospects of rehabilitation," end quote, because, quote, "the offenses were isolated," end quote, and she had committed to abstaining from drugs and alcohol. During the sentencing, the judge accepted the sexual assailant had been experiencing a, quote, "complex combination of comorbid mental disorders," end quote, at the time of the rape. She said also, quote, "in all probability, it was symptomatically acute at the time of the offending," end quote. The court heard the woman who had previously sought treatment for an eating disorder, anxiety disorder, and adjustment disorder. "In light of my failings as to the connection between the offending and the offender's mental issues, I accept the offender's moral culpability is reduced," Judge Hopkins said on Tuesday. She also found that there was justification for a longer parole period due to the onerous conditions of custody for the influencer, who had been subjected to, quote, "threats and harassment behind bars." The 46-year-old is likely to remain in protective custody for the remaining length of her sentence due to her profile and the offenses that she committed. She will be eligible for release in less than a year on February 26, 2025. Earlier this month, her lawyer confirmed the 46-year-old woman will appeal her conviction. The influencer has denied engaging in sexual activity with the teen beyond a kiss, which she said she stopped before it went any further. However, the jury found her guilty of engaging in oral sex with the teen before having penile vaginal sex with him in 3 different positions. Merely 2 hours earlier, the influencer was filmed performing a sexually suggestive dance for the 14-year-old boy. In the video shown to the court, she can be seen caressing her bum. This is an English, article. So, lifting her skirt to reveal her stomach and twerking in front of the victim. Judge Hopkins previously said the 46-year-old appeared to be very intoxicated in the video. The woman claimed she had drunk 1.5 bottles of wine on the night of the rape, while the victim estimated she had consumed twice that amount. A few days after sexually assaulting him, the court heard the influencer told the teen to, quote, "just keep this quiet for a bit," end quote. Yet, in a lawfully tapped phone call a year later, the 46-year-old laughingly admitted her attraction towards a 14-year-old boy. I started loving you so much that it got confused. Like, I started getting attracted to you, she told him. You're a man now. You're not a boy. You're obviously a man, she said. During the call, the influencer urged the victim several times not to tell his father about the late-night sexual assault.
I'm hearing a great deal of excuses from this woman along the lines of, it's something, drugs and alcohol, something, mental disorders, something, anorexia and shit like this.
And anxiety, eating disorder,
anxiety and stuff that happens to normal people all the time. I wonder how paradoxical it is to notice there's no greater predictor for victimizing behavior than victim mentality. This is often expressed when it comes to male feminists. They adopt the feminist mindset as a cover for their sex pesting, or indeed grape, if you want to call it, as a mechanism for automatic forgiveness for the transgressions to which they are so inclined. It's annoying the way people ascribe this specifically to male feminists as though it doesn't apply to female ones. If anything, it applies more to female ones, and for even more sinister reasons. Women adopt this victim mentality not as a retroactive cover for any atrocities that they might commit, but as a prescribed, proactive reason for getting away with anything. They're not even putting the cart before the horse. First, they decide that they are victims and they are victimized just by virtue of being female. And then, by some mad coincidence, they conclude nothing they do to any male-bodied individuals can possibly constitute victimization of those male-bodied individuals, or even any female-bodied individuals for that matter. If you've decided ahead of time that you are necessarily a victim just because you're a woman, then you can justify any action you take as being not victimizing. You can rape a man and it's not rape. You can rape a woman and it's not rape. You can rape a child and it's not rape. You can do anything that takes your fancy, no matter how exploitative, no matter how sadistic, and you never have to burden yourself with any remorse because you do not possess the appendage or indeed the identity that you have decided by foregone conclusion is by definition necessary for rape to have even taken place. This is only compounded when such a mindset is enshrined by law, when the system put in place to prevent rape doesn't even acknowledge that anything you do could ever be rape. Of course you're going to indulge your every whim, safe in the knowledge that you can never be called a rapist. Just try and think about this, folks, whenever you're saying something male feminist, as though it's somehow the maleness that makes male feminists so very rapey. It's not. It's the feminism. Female feminists are, if anything, even more rapey. Male predators use feminism to pretend they care about other people as a smokescreen, whereas female predators use feminism so that they genuinely don't have to even bother pretending to care about other people. It's not even a smokescreen. It's a sword and a shield. And when you deflect the evils of feminism onto men, then I'm sorry to tell you, but you are their shield and their sword. Imagine the good we could do for society if we made some effort to stop women from raping quite so very much. Women aren't inherently any more rapey than men, as far as I can tell, but when you give them an ideological excuse to get away with anything, you make them a great deal rapier. And that goes for any other demographic for whom so many excuses are made. No demographic is inherently evil. It's only when you overlook the possibility that anyone among them even can be evil. That's when you make all things possible. This has been done along racial lines, it's been done along religious lines, but they're all just secondary and tertiary symptoms of what has been done along the lines of gender for a very bloody long time. If you don't like where it's going, then start where it started. It started with this unfounded knee-jerk assumption that women as a demographic are victims and that men as a demographic are the perpetrators of that victimhood. It's not true. It's never been true. That's the head vampire. And as long as it continues to walk this earth, this shit will keep happening. I don't know what else to tell you. Public service announcement concludes.
Something that Peter Wright highlighted on Twitter a while back was and this is from a book about female sexual aggression, but there was a study on women's motives for sexual aggression and sexual initiation, which obviously you can't really lump those together, but they did for the study. So it ranged, the answers ranged from things like mutually consenting contact, which obviously is a motivation for sexual initiation, and then as you get to the bottom of the list, you get methods instead of motives, and some of them were violent. And it is not uncommon. In fact, feminists made this big deal about a study in which, in a feminism course, 1 in 3 of the male students answered questions in a way that the researchers were able to interpret to say that if nobody would know about it, they would engage in a whole set of rapey behaviors. But they interpreted that basically by taking answers that were anything from probably not to yes and lumping them all in as yes answers. This wasn't like that. This was women actually answering yes to things that they did. And on this list, you had by using the other person's age, when he was a minor and you were not, 29.3% of the women answered yes to that. When he was a minor and you were not. And then 26.5% by using a position of power and authority. So this isn't something that, yes, this kid was a minor. And I think that was a factor in this. I don't believe the claim that she was not attracted to him because he was a minor, that there was some other reason. Because otherwise she would have done this with an adult. Right? But I will bet this woman was also in a position of power here, besides her age. Being in a position of power like a babysitter or a stepmother or another situation, a tutor, something where this kid had to interact with her and was regularly exposed to her. And this predatory behavior isn't any more rare with women than it is with men. And in fact, it might be more common. The thing is that the crap that she says about being abnormal in various ways, the anxiety, the various mental health conditions, the being too drunk and all that, those things are factors in cases of male perpetrators. They're considered to be things that the court can look at in terms of, all right, how do we direct this guy's treatment program so that we can prevent him or discourage him from recidivism, meaning perpetration again, right? That's where that goes. It's not, are we going to convict him or not? It's, all right, we know all these things were contributing factors. How do we get him into a better mentality so that he will not perpetrate again? Women shouldn't have it any different than men. Right? Either you totally change the system for everybody, and these extenuating circumstances become a reason to change the whole incarceration system, so that you're not treating people as if they are just out of the blue with no extenuating circumstances willfully committing crimes. Or you change the system so that women are treated like men, and they do get convicted and they do get incarcerated, and then you figure out how to engage in treatment so that you can change their mentality so that they will not commit the crime again. And it's really important too, because when boys are sexually abused like this, they become up to 8 times more likely to commit suicide. They become up to 44 times more likely to engage in abuse of substances, which can be a slow suicide. 44 times more likely. This kid has just been put on a path that can lead to self-destruction on many levels. He is now more likely to have difficulties in his relationships with women. So if he's heterosexual, that's going to affect his ability to find a partner, create a partnership, an intimate relationship, and start a family. And if that's something that he wants to do, and she just fucked it up for him, she just ruined his life. Right? He's in a set of victims that are more likely to question their sexuality. So they're basically experiencing a type of dysphoria. And he's in a set of victims that are more likely to engage in a whole range of potentially self-destructive behaviors, to not do as well in school because of the stress of their situation, to have their career path affected by that. Right? This isn't just a minor thing that she did. And him being a boy doesn't just make it a minor thing. And this is something that we have talked about over and over again every time we see one of these stories. And if people didn't care about anything else to do with this story, all of the bad things that she has just inflicted on this boy, he's also more likely, or at least he's in a group of victims that are more likely to become perpetrators than non-victims in their later life. So if people can't be compassionate, at least maybe they can be mercenary enough to care about this because of how she could have warped him. But chances are she'll probably get more lenient treatment because she's a woman, and she won't be treated like a man.
You know, the worst part of this is? The worst part about this is people who are in prison for sexual crimes, the overwhelming majority of them, over 90%, have experienced sexual assault themselves. So what is going to happen, I'm going to make a prediction, although I may not be around to see the conclusion of it. This 14-year-old boy who was sexually assaulted by this woman, who did not really suffer, massive consequences, is now at a much higher risk of going on and sexually assaulting somebody himself, unless he gets a lot of help and support. And if he does, that will make the news. That person will see real jail time, and the narrative will continue. It will become a story about patriarchy and men, because the abuse of boys is ignored. And the reason why is because it benefits these people in the long run, because the abused boy goes on to abuse. And then when they abuse, they become that becomes the story and not where it came from. And if you look, over 95% of criminals, of felons that are in prisons for violent crimes, were themselves abused as children. And they don't have mothers, or they don't have fathers, I'm sorry, in the home. And they go on to do these things. And what do these people do? What do the intellectuals do? What do the politicians do? What do the media people do? What do the podcasters do? They look at that and they say, oh, that's just men. Like they treat it like it's in a vacuum. So this is what is going to happen. This is what, like, this boy, if he goes on to offend, that will be the story, not the woman who did this to him. So anyway, those are my thoughts on that. I don't know if you guys have anything else to add, but we'll move on to the next story. I got a super chow from Richard Bier, thank you, and he gives us $5 and says, her being intoxicated at the time of the incident would make the underage boy the perpetrator. I'm surprised that she didn't try that angle for her defense and claim victimhood. Well, she only kissed him, according to her.
Something that needs to be enacted actually is perpetrators need to have to pay for the victim's therapy. If that's not already a thing, it needs to be. And the victim's therapy needs to, include efforts at reestablishing their confidence in themselves and their own sexuality and their goodness as a person, so that they don't end up, becoming self-destructive or becoming destructive toward other people.
Yeah.
She caused this. She should pay for it.
Agreed. At the very least, right?
Yeah, at the very least.
At the very
well,
most,
let us know what you... Oh, go ahead.
I'm just saying, wood chipper. I mean, she should pay for his therapy and then wood chipper. It is a compromise. Yeah.
Well, let us know what you guys think in the comments section. We're going to move on to the next story. Our last story of the day is about Charlotte Prudman. Name?
We are finishing on some good news after all.
Yeah, I guess it is good news, yeah. Dr. Charlotte Prudman, a barrister, faces disciplinary action for criticizing a family court judgment by Sir Jonathan Cohen on Twitter. She accused the judgment of reflecting a, quote, boys club, end quote, attitude, and demanded recusal of Philip Hayers, another judge and Garrick Club member, from her proceedings. Prudman's tweets could result in suspension or even a fine, with charges of misleading information and offensive language. She denies all charges, arguing that for her right to freedom of expression. Suddenly, the feminist cares about freedom of speech. The case highlights concerns over judicial membership in exclusive clubs like the Garrick, with implications for perceived bias and judicial conduct. And by the way, Charlotte Prudman was a staunch supporter of Amber Heard during the Amber Heard and Johnny Depp. And she probably still is, actually. So anyway, that's in brief.
So basically, it wasn't her family court case. She just commented on this random case and insisted that this guy shouldn't have been on the case. That's kind of who is she to do that? Like she's not anybody special. She's
Charlotte Prudman.
I mean, like we criticize all the time, but it's interesting that she called for specific action against this.
Yeah. I mean, you want me to go into some more detail?
I'm kind of looking at the detail here.
So
after considering her request, he did remove himself from the case. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, that's the judge handling her disciplinary proceedings. Okay. So, I don't... Oh, it's the men-only Garrick Club over remarks he made in a family case 2 years ago. So, she just went after this this guy over his reasoning in the case.
It says here, there is no suggestion that Cohen and Havers discussed this case or any work matters or ever met at the Central London Club. So she's like making allegations. But it highlights some of the issues around public perception raised by the membership of significant numbers of Britain's most senior judges of a club that has resisted calls to allow female members since the 1960s. So she's trying to enter in or use this as a way. Proudman could face a 12-month suspension of her license or a fine if found in breach for posting a 14-part thread on X. Holy crap, that's some spurgy shit. Then called Twitter in April of 2022. It expressed her concerns at the tone of a judgment handed down by Cohen in relation to a family court case. 3-person disciplinary panel will consider the 5 professional misconduct charges against her later this year. She is accused by the Bar Standards Board of tweeting misleading information that inaccurately reflected the findings of the judge in a case in which she was instructed. So
interesting. I suspect then that she probably promoted the story of the wife in that case, or the mother of the kids, if it was a custody case. Family court indicates maybe divorce and custody. But that would be what I would like. I don't pay a lot of attention to her, but that kind of, yeah. And
I try not to.
She made a long thread about it, and she said things that are not factual. I'll bet it's something along those lines, and that's an issue that's kind of more widespread than just her. So it is nice to see that being done. Although I don't know. It's interesting. It's interesting, that she felt entitled to call for action and stuff.
Other than her being a vocal supporter of Amber Heard, what else is Charlotte Prudman? I know that name, Dr.
She got
Charlotte
involved
Prudman.
in a case in the United States,
I think so.
And it helped to deny due process to 3 young men who had been accused of a crime. So
this is probably the most flattering picture of her, and she still looks really smug in it.
Yeah, it's amazing because I've seen her with her hair really, really short, like head shaved short. But yeah.
Yikes. Mike, do you have anything?
I didn't even know what she looked like until you showed me that picture. None of that is important. The important thing is she's a massive hose beast and a cunt. and I hope that she gets recused all the way down to the bowels of hell where she belongs.
Afuera!
Afuera!
Okay, well, let us know what you guys think about the story. Mr. 0303 says she was a professor at Cambridge who organized the mob against Mike Buchanan and Elizabeth Hobson. That's where I knew her from.
There we go.
That's where I knew her from. Thank you, Mr. 0303. Yes, that's right. And I got a super chow from Richard Bier, who gives us $5 and says, W. Leaf in Canada is a bunch of legal bloggers who sit on a court proceedings and then write about the judges in order to nudge the outcome in a certain way. Next time you have Diana Davidson on, ask her about that organization. I know that she mentioned it at ICMI 19. The majority of the cases, if I remember correctly, were those involving SA, sexual assault, if not family court proceedings. Is that what the SA stands for? I assume. Thank you, Richard, for that super chow. You know what? Actually, I need to reach out to...
I found something, actually.
Okay.
It's another article, a guest post, and this is a guest post from Dr. Charlotte Prudman, family law barrister at Goldsmith Chambers, specializing in violence against women and girls. She tweets as Dr. Proudman, and then the article goes on. It's it's criticizing a June 21st, 2019 Ministry of Justice announcement. Panel professionals that will be reviewing evidence on how the family courts can better protect children and parents in cases of domestic abuse and serious offenses. And so I think if that's her specialty, this has to have been a situation where abuse was alleged and she didn't believe the evidence against it.
Uh-huh.
And that's probably what she went on her rant about.
Yeah, well, 14 posts, that does seem a bit excessive.
She's basically saying that because this judge belongs to a club that doesn't allow women in, that makes him automatically prejudiced against alleged victims of domestic violence. And that's the factor that would do it. Nothing else. Just the fact that he is in a male-only space. So when feminists tell you that women are not attacking male-only spaces, there you go.
There you go. Well, let's see what happens. Hopefully there is some consequences. I mean, I'm generally like for free speech, but I don't think Charlotte Prudman is. Maybe if she feels a sting, she'll be like, oh, I should probably fight for that. That whole free speech thing seems kind of important. All right. Well, with all that said, let us go into the patron show where we're going to be looking at this article that is about how the typical American family was always just a blip. It's time to rethink it, which sounds like code for eliminate it and let's all just, I guess, go extinct for the planet. And I'm wondering if the person who wrote this actually has a family, because most of the time I find that the people who are the most anti-natalist have families of their own. They just don't want it for you, you know? So anyway, hopefully I'll see you guys in the patron show chat, and you can join us there by going to feedthebachelor.com and starting a monthly subscription. $5 a month will get you to our Discord, where you'll be able to watch all the additional content, partake in the chat, and all of the community stuff. So please consider doing that. Oh, also, by the way, I'm going to throw this out there, a quick little plug. There is a game called Content Warning on Steam. It is free, right? Only today. So, like, go look on Steam, see if it's there, see if you can get it for free. It's an indie title. It's a 4-player co-op horror title, okay? So, called Content Warning. Go check it out. I've downloaded it. It was recommended to me by John, who is a Gamergate 2 guy that was like is trying to push people in the direction towards indies. So go check it out. Content Warning on Steam. It's free. Why not? Only today though. Today is it. Like, it might even not be available. I'm not really sure what. It's a 24-hour period. It might be past, but go check it out. Anyway, hopefully I'll see you guys in the after show chat. But we're gonna head there now. So if you like this video, please hit like, subscribe if you're not already subscribed, hit the bell for notifications, leave us a comment, let us know what you guys think about what we discussed on the show. There are links to all of the sources in the description, in the description of this video. And please, please, please share this video, because sharing is caring. Thank you so much for coming on today's episode of HBR News, and we will see you next Tuesday.
Afuera!
Are machines, dude. Okay, they are literal machines. They are talking point machines. They are impossible to fucking deal with, especially if you have like a couple dudes who have good memory on top of that too. Holy shit, you're fucked.